Today is Thursday, December 3rd, 2020. I would like to welcome everyone who is on the meeting here, on the Zoom meeting. I would like to call to order a special board meeting with the title of Distance Learning Update. Again, welcome everyone who is in attendance tonight. And the disclosure, hopefully technical difficulties evade us once again. We are doing our best. Having said that, Chris, I'll turn the meeting over to you and you can take it from here.
Thank you so much, Board President. I wanted to just share with the board and the public that we did have an opportunity to meet during an exempt session. Part of that conversation, or the conversation, was for negotiations, but during that conversation, we discussed and co-constructed with the board a metric that's going to be presented tonight by the district. And also there was conversation with the board, and what we wanted to do is make that public this evening. So we're going to have Pete Perez to share the metric, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you, Board President, for discussion.
Very well. Go ahead, Pete.
I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update for the board in response to our discussions regarding the consideration of metrics that would guide our transitions for distance blended and in-person learning. I think it's important to recognize the complexity of schooling during a pandemic and acknowledge that what can be seen as a solution to one problem for one group has consequences or can create problems for another group. And certainly the groups include, but are not limited to, our students, our staff, our families, and our constituents. I think it's also important to remember that these problems are informed and influenced by the goals of each of those groups and how each group defines the problem. And oftentimes these types of problems are impossible to ever fully solve, as every solution at one end of the system has a consequence for another. And really the responsibility of leadership is to think through these types of problems and work towards equitable solutions. And so I'd like to share with you a draft set of metrics that, if approved, would guide our transitions for distance blended and in-person learning. So the metrics you're going to see this evening are broken out into two categories: elementary, which would reference PK through 6, and secondary, which would be 7 through 12. You'll notice that the metrics look like others that we've talked about in the past. There are 3 basic categories: a traditional in-person model, which is indicated in the green area, the yellow sort of cautious area around blended learning, and then the far right, the red area, would be a distance learning instructional model. At the top of each column, you'll see the numbers that are indicated for those particular zones. I'll start on the far right in the elementary section. We're recommending, after our discussion with the board, that at 400 per 100,000, we would be in a distance learning model. We would consider transitions, and that gray area was certainly a significant part of the conversation that we had with the board about considering those as hard lines or guidelines that inform our determination about what model to be in. We just wanted to be clear with everyone that the transition would include consideration of the rate per 100,000, also the rate of spread in our community, specifically in Othello, apart from the county, and also what's happening in our schools. Are our staff on site? Do we have enough employees to operate safely? So those factors would influence which direction we move. So an example in that area might be if we're 405 per 100,000, does that mean we're going to shut down? Or does it mean we're going to have a conversation with stakeholders and say, we know we're at that edge, but the rate of spread in our community itself or in our schools is low enough, all our staff are here and we can operate safely, then we'd want to have a conversation with the stakeholders about what model we're going to be in. So these metrics are meant to inform our decision making, but they do provide consistent guidelines for our leaders, for our principals to think about, and provides consistency and coherence for our staff and for our families. The middle zone is sort of that 1 to 400 area. We'd be in a blended instructional model. Certainly we spent a couple of weeks in that model, most recently at our elementary schools with our K-3 students. So we know we can get there, and we've been there before. And then we're recommending that anything below 100 for our PK through 6 students, we'd be able to safely transition into a traditional in-person instructional model, keeping in mind all of the safety protocols that we've been implementing from day one, and would continue to implement those until we felt like it was safe to be, what we all would view or call a normal school setting. Another important difference in this metric is that for K3, the recommendation is that it is at 150 per 100,000. What influences that is our ability and our opportunity that we've already had to be open in that model with our K3 students and staff, but also that those students continue to be ones that we're really concerned about making sure that they're having an experience that allows them to make progress and demonstrate understanding. So for K3, it would be 150 per 100,000. Another foundational component of the metrics that you should note is that our small group in-person opportunities, and some of those could be face-to-face, in-person. They could also be done through, our platform happens to be Zoom, that those interventions for struggling students may be provided in all phases. We feel really comfortable that we could do that safely. And certainly those are conversations between building administrators, teaching staff, and families to decide how can we support students that are struggling to find success. That's a brief description of the PK through 6 metrics. Secondary metrics, a very similar format. You'll see the foundational component around small group and for struggling students. These metrics, they're just a slight adjustment in that right-hand column, the 300 per 100,000. We know there are additional challenges and complexities with cohorting students in secondary schools. So that influenced our thinking around that and was shared with the board in those conversations. We also know that those students are finding more success than some of our younger students. And so we continue to believe that we can provide a quality experience for our kids in a distance learning model. The metric in the middle, 1 to 300, again, just a slight change from what you noted in the PK through 6 metrics. And the green zone, a traditional in-person instruction, 0 to 100 would mirror the metrics above. So those are our notes in our thinking about potential metrics after our conversation with the board during the exempt session. So that's what we have to share with you tonight.
All right, appreciate that, Pete. I will now open the floor for discussion. We had a pretty good discussion the other day when we had the exempt meeting. There's been a few tweaks, I'll say, in one of the metrics, but it's open to give our points of view and have a discussion.
I'll go first. So I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are unhappy from both sides with these numbers. Our board has been divided on this issue pretty much from the beginning on how to do different things and what to do. These numbers were a big, long discussion amongst the 5 of us. And knowing that we either make one group happy or another group happy or no one happy, I think that this is our middle ground. I would like the numbers to be different. I'm sure that everyone could say that. But we need to come together, I think, and come up with something that, sadly, with this polarizing issue, that everyone's a little unhappy, but is willing to meet in the middle for. And that this becomes a community responsibility for, if you want your kids on campus, then we all need to think about our actions and not putting the blame on anyone, but it's a whole community. When we come up with metrics that we accept, it's a whole community that has to not only buy in, but help to get to these kinds of numbers.
You know, just to kind of echo what Jen says, none of these decisions are come to lightly. This is hours of contemplating, and you know, it's a prayerful decision. It's a lot of weight is put on these decisions, and as board members, we're under an intense amount of pressure from people on both sides of this issue. And this is not an easy decision. So however, whatever we end up accepting tonight, I just encourage the public to know that these decisions are not made lightly. And we try and take into consideration everybody's feelings and everyone's health and everyone's best interest in moving forward, and none of it is done with malice towards any group or any idealism or anything like that. And I think people know I've been a big proponent for kids being in person, and that just like the other side makes you a hero to some people and a zero to other people. And I'm looking forward to some unity. Our district is no different than the country in the polarization, just like Jen talked about. And I know that I am deeply looking forward to a time where this is all a distant memory and we are all united and back on the same team.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. First, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. Like I said, this was a very tedious project. It's been very stressful. The last, actually, if you want to know, since March has been very stressful since we've had to close down schools. And it's, we've had some tough decisions to make along the way. And this ain't gonna be the last one. We're gonna have more going down the road, I believe. Remote learning, as everybody knows, I want to see the kids back in school. I want to see them back in school as quick as possible, as soon as possible, but as safely as possible also too. Which we have took a lot of steps and measures to make it safely for our students and teachers back in the classroom. Something that has been stressed by the governor and everyone else, that kids in the classroom actually helps mitigate the problem of COVID spread. They are safe, and wherever we go or whatever we do, we're going to continue to keep it that way, if not continually improve on our safety with the kids in the classroom. I was, as you know, Chris Rydell, Washington State Superintendent of Public Instruction Schools, spoke in front of the House Education Committee this Monday. And I just want to quote him in a little something that he said to them. He said, "They're failing a lot. And it turns out in the beginning, we thought it was all about devices and connectivity. And that's certainly still some of it. They're failing because they're not engaged." Rydell adding that he has even watched his own children struggle with remote learning. We have heard from many, many parents along the way, and kids themselves, how it has been a struggle for remote learning. So we need to get off of this as soon as possible. And maybe this metrics is one way to do that, to make a good transition. I know we had a number earlier on that of about 500 to start. I still think that's a good number that we can work with and still work safely within our community to get our kids back in school. That's pretty much where I am at right now. I do want to see us continue. I would like to see K through 3 back in the classroom, whether it's blended or if our numbers are low enough, are traditional to start with right after the first of the year. I think we need to try to push on that as hard as we can and do everything we can to try to get that group in there. Thank you.
Well, I guess my feelings are pretty much the same as Ken and Lindsay. I want to see the kids back in school. When you talk to children and they're telling you that they're lost, and these are some cannot understand how to do the heartening. We're not out to get anyone. We don't want to see anyone hurt with any illness. So please don't think that we're out there to get anyone. We're just trying to figure out what will work best in our community. So see the kids get back as soon as possible, and that's about it.
Okay, as you all can see, I think it's hard not to wear your emotions when the subject is so complex, so in the mind of everyone and how it affects everyone. I'd like to applaud my peers, my fellow board members for their openness tonight. To the community, this is not about sides. The rhetoric out there is that we're trying to pin one side versus the other. Every decision that's being made, the kids are at the forefront. Having said that, I think we're in unison, the 5 of us, when we, if possible, the kids were in school today. That's what we want. We have acknowledged some opportunities for improvement on the distance learning model. Some improvements have been made from when it was instituted in March. These are countless hours trying to figure out, what to say, how to say it, without trying to inject fear, inject favoritism. Community of Othello, this is a very, very tough and complex situation. Having said that, a metric, in my opinion, I believe is necessary. We have had the discussion of the roller coaster, the up and down, in for a week, out for a week, how that isn't beneficial to the kids, how it's not fair to district administrators. How do you plan when you don't know what's going to happen next week? Having these numbers, I think, is a foundation to be able to have a plan, is something where planning can be adjusted. I believe having transition periods that aren't concrete, that aren't drop dead dates like Mr. Perez mentioned, whether it was at 400 and you're at 405, oh my God, that means I'm closed. No, it means that we utilize this to have a discussion to see what is in the best interest of the district. I know for a fact that I think a challenge has been set by a couple of the directors on several occasions. This is not, 5 people that are going to wear their mask and they're going to decide this. This is a community issue. When they say our rate per 1,000, it involves all of us. It involves perhaps doing something you don't agree with, but at the end of the day, the sooner we get those numbers down, the sooner our kids are back in front of their teachers, which is what all of us want. We have heard from both sides. We have been inundated with emails from varying opinions. And again, we've always said that there is no right, there is no wrong. What is right is that our kids get back to school as soon as we can, but at the same time, we need to do this in a safe way. The last thing we want to do is jeopardize or put any employees in harm's way. The last thing we want to do, or the last thing I want to do, is come across as a dictator and prohibit, someone from doing something that deep down in their hearts, they believe they're entitled to. I mean, I don't want to be the one that says that you can't do it. I don't think any of us want to, but it is something that we need to have, a constant reminder of every day that, the quicker our numbers are down, the quicker our kids are in front of their teachers, and the quicker they have an opportunity to hopefully make up, what's been lost. This is not a rebuke on distance learning for those teachers that are having great success and some of those success stories that are out there, even among students. This is not a rebuke on that. When we say that we'd rather have the kids back in class, it's because that's the best place for them. But we need to do this, guys, in a way that is a compromise, in a way that, again, it's not about a side. This is difficult. This is very tedious. Director Prowse said, there's a lot of pressure. There is. I'm sure you can see my red is a little, face is a little red, and it's not because I've got a fever. There's a lot of pressure. But I just want the community to know that the 5 of us, we have had meetings with the district administration. We have listened to their plan. There's been discussions with the unions, and questions have been asked. And I believe that this metric is a good starting point. I think it is something that Director Stevenson said, finally all 5 of us were able to put our minds around a number, perhaps not what we wanted, but it's something that we can work with, something that hopefully if everyone, every community member does their part, like Director Prowse said, this is something we don't even think about here shortly, but it's going to take all of us to do this. I want to thank Chris and his team for the time and effort that they put into this. Again, we throw them curveballs and they go back to the table and they readjust, they amend things, and we appreciate that very much. So having said that, are we done discussing these numbers? Is there anything else? I know, Ken, you mentioned a different number. Go ahead, Jen.
I just want to clarify. Can you bring the metrics back up? A couple of different things. So, I know the answers, but I want everybody else to know it and hear it, because I think that we have a lot of people that are watching or will be watching. So if we accept numbers, metrics that we follow, we're no longer following dates. Can I just get a confirmation from the district?
That is accurate.
Also, can you give us a definition of a couple of different things? Small group, how many is small group? And the definition of struggling students, struggling academically, those that have F's and D's, what is the definition, just so that there's full clarity for everyone?
Yeah, I can address both of those components. So the definition of small group will vary across the continuum of K-12. A small group in a kinder classroom might be 3 students, where a small group in a secondary classroom might be 6 or 8. Really, what we will look to in developing the small groups is who needs those specific interventions. Can we bring like groups together? Can we, in essence, cohort them? But it'll be driven by also what's the capacity of the room. So I don't think we could say that there might not be 8 or 10 students in a high school small group if that teacher said, hey, I want all these kids in, one's in the A period, one's in the B, but they all have a similar issue. I want to bring them all in. If we can do it safely, which we've proven we can, and you might have 10 kids in there. If it's 2 kids, it really will be driven by the need and by the grade level, but it would be certainly within the confines of what you can do safely based on square footage. Your other question was around struggling students, and really that determination is made at the building level by the teachers. The teachers would tell us these kids are struggling in these areas, and certainly you would expect that much of that would be focused on instruction and students' mastery of the standards, but there also might be components around social emotional learning. And something just doesn't seem right with this student. I'd like to bring them in and have a chance to meet with them. Maybe we're doing a small group with our counselors and they create a small Zoom intervention group that is as like a circle group that is typical in an SEL setting, and our counselors might, organize that and put that together. So struggling means kids that are having trouble finding success in a distance learning model.
Okay, thank you. I just would rather it be over clarified and everything. I would like to move that we accept these
Jen,
metrics.
I had,
Sorry, Ken, did you have something?
no, yeah, I still had something. There was also something for clarity too, that this matrix, I know the state is currently working on something to try to help ease it and make it easier for districts to get back in. And I just want it also clear, or everybody knowing that if the state comes back with numbers that are more favorable or make it easier so we could get that are better than what we have set in our matrix, that we can revisit this matrix and even change it as a board, so we could, it might work better to get our kids back in sooner. Is that right? We can revisit this matrix at any time?
I think that would, I don't think we ever want to make this close-ended. These are, just like Pete mentioned on one of the great transitions, even though the number is 400, does that mean 405 is drop dead?
Yes.
And I think that as the state eases regulations or eases numbers or whatever the scenario may be, it would behoove the districts to adhere to those if absolutely they create a better chance of getting the kids back sooner. I think we should absolutely be open to, if come the first of the year, something dramatic has changed, we revisit this. Yeah, I think we should have that option open.
Okay, great. Sorry, Jen, now I'm ready.
It's totally fine. I would rather us over clarify or question everything. I'm a questioner anyways. Transportation for small groups is something that is has been discussed. I'm sorry that sometimes I just need to write all of my thoughts on paper and not just let them come.
Yeah, it's certainly an item that has been discussed. I think back to Director Johnson's point about whether or not we would revisit these metrics. I think if there's any evidence of what's happened in the system the last 8 or 9 months, is that we have to be ready to adjust based on changes in guidance from the Department of Health, from the CDC, and from OSPI. So one of the folks in our system that's done a tremendous job in adjusting is our Director of Transportation, Marion Shade. So the conversations we've had with Marion and her team are that, hey, if we're in this distance learning model, we know you're going to have to make a switch and figure out how to get meals to a number of students. And in her partnership with our Director of Food Service, Jeanette Root, they've come up with an effective system. So what these metrics will provide is an opportunity for them to get some clarity about how long they should expect to be in those models. So what we expect around transportation is, once Marion understands that here's what the rate is, here's what we're projecting as a possible time where we're gonna transition to something that's less restrictive. It gives her time to think about the manpower, think about her structures. And so our hope would be that we would be able to provide transportation for students because we have the drivers that are available. And how do we balance that with meal delivery? These metrics give us a chance to plan that out and be a little more consistent and coherent. Initially, though, the small groups will be asking parents to provide transportation and to bring them in. We'll have limited capacity with our home visitors to go pick up students if we believe it's safe and we can do it safely. So our hope is that as the system gets refined, we would be able to provide limited transportation for some of those students.
Okay, thank you for my scatterbrainness. For clarifying for the scatterbrainness, I should say. I move that we accept the proposed metrics.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve the proposed metrics. Can I get a second on that? I'd like to second that. There's been a motion to accept the metrics. It's been seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
I am opposed.
okay. Motion carries 3-2. Metrics will be accepted. Once again, community of Othello, we are imploring your help with this issue. We can't stress how this involves all of us. We can't stress it enough. We are needing to get our kids back to school, but we also need to stress the importance of safety. There's stories out there that are horrifying. There's some stuff that we're not in this alone. I mean, I've seen articles in the paper where neighboring districts are themselves having staffing issues. They're having to close down schools in other neighboring districts. So it's not exclusive to Othello. But I do know that we can worry about, or we can do what we can do for Othello, which means doing the things that we have to do. I thank every one of my board members. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the countless hours that we've put to this, and the criticism that comes with it, good and bad, just comes with the territory, comes with a position. Once again, I want to thank the community who's listening tonight, and I just want to thank everybody who was able to be here tonight. Having said that, our business is concluded and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.